All right, welcome back to Fabrication 101. I'm glad to have you guys back at the shop. It's been a minute, I've been busy. November gets kind of crazy for us. So anyway, a while back, right before we went to Super Celebration, I picked up a rooftop tent and I threw together a really quick rack for it. And now I want to build a little bit better rack for it to go on the back of my truck here. So we're just going to use some angle iron. I'm going to bend some round tube and we're going to make a rack real quick for this thing. It may evolve over time. And get a little bit more stuff. I've got some ideas floating around in the old brain up there, so we're going to get after it. First thing we're going to tackle is mounting the rails to the bed of the truck, and so come out here. Okay, stay up there. All right, so we've got some of this. This is 2.5 by 2.5 by 3/16 angle iron. Honestly, it's heavier than I really think we need. But it's what I have available, so we're gonna go ahead and roll with it. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna notch this around this little part of the bed frame, and then we're gonna work on how to mount this to the bed. And I'm just gonna go with a couple bolts through the material into the bed, like 6 of them, 2 here, 2 in the middle, 2 on the other end, and we'll call those good. So we're gonna tackle that first, and then we'll get to bending some tube. You ready? So there's been a little bit of a change of plans in the rail setup on these. I switched to some different material. This is now 3x2 3/16 angle iron. I really wanted a little bit more width on the top of the rail to mount the main hoops to, or the tubes to. So I went with this. I didn't need all the side, so I went with the 3x2. Unfortunately, it's weird. You can't get this material any thinner than 3/16. So that's what we decided to go to. We've got the holes drilled in the top. We're going to run these countersink fasteners down through there. Because I'm not really a huge fan of drilling holes through the bed of my truck, even though it's like a 22-year-old truck. I made these pieces. These are going to slide under the rails. And then these bolts go down through the stake pockets in the bed of the truck to bolt down here and here. And then I'll figure out the end once I have the hoops on, or the tubes on. See, what I did here is are you recording? Yeah. Is I cut a bolt that I can use to align things. I just cut the head off. So once I have one side started, I can take it out. I can put the other one in. And that side's lined up. And as soon as I remember what I did with my ratchet, I can tighten things down. Now this one's a little more tricky, because I have to fish it up with this little magnet and then do it. There's one. Now I can take this out, put this one in, and hopefully I'm able to reach up through here. I may have to run that one up a little bit more.
Do I need to reach them in?
Can you?
I can. Does that work?
I think so. Yep, that's good. And I just kind of work these down. I may have to do something to change these so that they don't work their way loose, because as you can see, as I tighten one down, the other one comes loose. I think when these are in permanently, I may put some Loctite on these. That one's... The other thing is I'm not quite sure how far I want to take these to get them tight. Go ahead and go to do the middle ones. There you go. And I wanted these to be smooth, countersunk. On the temporary rack I'd built, I just had studs sticking up through and ran a bolt or a nut down on top of them. The problem is, when we're setting up the rooftop tent, we walk on these rails, and I didn't want to have something to trip over. Plus, if we're loading stuff over the side of the bed of the truck, it just makes for a lot easier way to load things. So we'll finish getting these snugged down, and then we're going to start building the main tube that's going to go right behind the cab. All right, well, the Model 4 tubing bender is out, and that must mean it's time to bend some tube. And because I can't find my reference bend that I use for my 2-inch tubing, I have my main die up here on the table, and I just used it to kind of trace out the shape of half of my tube. So here's my center line. This is the top edge of the tube. It's going to run along, bend down, and come out here to the edge of the table. If you're ever doing this stuff, and I don't have a drawing program as much as nice as it would be, I don't do enough tubing bending right now, or tube bending right now, to justify a program. But one of the first important things you need to do when you're bending tube like this is pick a side. You either want to measure from the top all the time, the bottom all the time, or the center all the time. You don't want to be switching back and forth. And it may seem silly to say that, but it's something I've done. I know a lot of guys, fabricators, have done that kind of stuff, where they accidentally switch things around, and it kind of messes them up on their pieces. So I think a lot of tubing has been wasted over the years by a lot of different fabricators because they get their inside and outside dimensions kind of crisscrossed or mixed up. But anyway, so I've kind of had to make an educated guess here. This is the apex of the bend where the straight meets the curve. And you have to come out a distance from it to start your bend. And if I had a piece of tube to make a reference bend, I would. I just don't have a piece of scrap right now I want to waste. But because I do this is a guess, and it could be off a little bit, but because I do this, it's a symmetrical piece, and I do it in 2 halves. I can adjust where my center line is once I know where that reference line or that bend meets up. So we're gonna go ahead and put the tubing bender back together, get some stuff set up, then we're gonna go ahead and bend our first piece of 2-inch 120 wall round tube for this hoop. First bend is done. Came out pretty good. Actually, the bend came out just fine. My measurement was off just a little bit. You can see here was my initial bend mark, and here is the bend mark when I line up the edge of the bend. So I'm off by about an inch or so. I'm not really concerned about what that measurement is. What I do is I remark my bend mark on the table or wherever I'm drawing things, and then I come to my center line that I marked on the table and transfer the old center line onto the tube, creating a new center line. This is the old one, this is the new one. Now I measure from the new center line to my bend mark and transfer that to that side of the bend, and my piece should come out symmetrical the way I want it to. The measurement should line up. I will end up with a little bit more of a tail on that side than on the new side than I will on that side, but it should be okay. Ordinarily, I would measure from my center line and kind of rough measurement and get an idea how much tube I need. I wouldn't just leave them long like this. However, my measurement came out to like 4.5 feet. This piece of tube is about 10 feet long, so I just left it long, and I'll trim off those ends. So we're gonna get the next side transferred and bent, and then we'll go through the process of cutting the ends off and see how it fits on the rack. All right, well, that's on there, and it, surprisingly enough, is level, even though, and amazingly enough, I put that piece of square tube across the bed, and the bed is level. I don't know how I managed to do that, but it's level. It is just a really little tiny bit wide down here, so I think instead of trying to add a little bit more bend, I think I'm just gonna knock maybe like 1/8 of an inch off each side, and that'll lower it, but it also move this point in on each side. And I want to be real careful because an 1/8 inch down may not seem like much, but it's going to move that in quite a bit. So I don't want to cut too much off and end up with it being too narrow. But right now I'm pretty happy with the way things are going. So we'll pull that thing down, clean up those ends a little bit, and trim them down just a tiny bit more, and then we'll put it back up here and see how it fits. Well, that piece came out pretty good. And a little bit lower than I was hoping, but that's tacked in place. I'm going to put a tube across, right around, somewhere around here. That's going to go across. And that's actually going to be the level at which the tent sits. I'm trying to get this tent to sit just above my height, which is 6 foot, ish, depending on what kind of 7-Eleven I'm walking out of. And then there'll be tubes that come off of it and go backwards to the rear tube on the back of the truck. So we're going to go ahead and get that part knocked out here, and we'll keep moving forward. That tube's all tacked in. Took me a couple tries, just because I cut it a little long intentionally, just so I had enough room to make sure I had nice clean notches. You can see I used the blue masking tape there to kind of give myself a line to figure out my notch angle, which I really didn't need to do, because if you're at all familiar with angles and geometry and that kind of stuff, the notch angle there is actually the same angle that I cut here on this tube, which is kind of interesting. So anyway, now it's time to figure out the back tube, which is going to be a little different. It's not going to go straight up and down. I don't want this one just straight. I'm actually going to lean it in a little bit, about 7.5 inches. It's really just for style. I think it would look better than just having it straight up and down. And I've got some big, heavy, not heavy, but some watertight cases that I want to put up there. So anyway, I had to do some math to figure that part out. You can see here I did the old a squared plus b squared equals c squared to figure out my height that I needed. And it should, hopefully, if I did all this correctly, this line here, which I'm not sure if you guys can see on this table, should be my bend. So we're going to measure out a piece of tube, get it cut, get it cleaned, and then go ahead and get it bent. All right, well, I'm not sure how much of the process you saw. I was having a lot of problems with my brand new GoPro's batteries. Kind of a weird issue. The thing on the screen, the little dial on the screen showing like 75% battery. Turn the camera on, camera runs for like 10 seconds and then shuts off, says there's no battery. So anyway, hopefully this one lasts a little bit longer. We're almost 30 seconds now. Anyway, the rack, as you can see, is pretty much done for this round. There are some things I want to add in the future, but I got an upcoming trip that I need to get this on the truck for, get some other things taken care of. So this is where it's going to end up right now and go on the truck here pretty quick. As you can see on this front section, I added in this diamond plate aluminum. The tent itself comes to about here, and then I've got those plastic cases that are going to sit up here and tie down with those straps. The only thing I'm not super pumped on is those cases open from the side, and you won't be able to really get into them without taking the case down. But I couldn't really find anything that was quick and easy that would work in this case, so we're going to roll with it. The idea for those cases is to put stuff that's fairly lightweight, that we don't need to use a lot or all the time, and specifically not when we're on the trailer driving, so we don't need to access it until we're camping. So thinking like emergency, like maybe not emergency, but extra clothes, extra bedding, warm stuff like that in case we get wet or something, rain, who knows. But that's kind of the idea. Hit me a comment down below if you got a suggestion as for something I can put in there. Anyway, I gotta wrestle this thing up there. It's raining a little bit right now, so I'm gonna wrestle this thing up on the back of the truck, get it secured, and then I'm gonna go mount the tent. We'll be back in a minute. All right, the rack is done, if you can see it up there. A little bit of a struggle to get it on. I got to make a couple little tweaks to it. But other than that, I'm super pleased with the way it came out. You can see everything, it actually sits a little bit lower than the last one I had on here. The boxes are in place, tied down, looks good. I'm pretty happy with that. And then where the tent is, there's a little bit of room under here where we could slide something flat, maybe some small pieces of wood or traction boards or something like that if we're out in a place where we get stuck. But anyway, I'm pretty pleased with the way it came out. Looking really happy. Can't wait to use this in a couple weeks. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you guys for watching this episode of Fabrication 101 and the first phase of turning my butt into an overlander. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. If you got some ideas, drop them in the comment section below and we'll see if we can institute any of that kind of stuff. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of Fabrication 101. In the meantime, do me a favor, do yourself a favor, and go build something. Oh, you're recording already.
How's the weather?
Weather's beautiful. Very nipply.
There's no chance you put that in your video.
It's not gonna.